Welcome to the Brie Pod. I'm here with Caitlyn Dorsey, Abundance Alchemist and Animal Communicator. Hi, Caitlyn.
Hi, Bree. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining me. I'm super excited when we had our first chat before we, recorded, and we talked about what you do and like what your mission and passion is in life. And I just wanted you to share with us, what is the Abundance Alchemist and what is it being an animal communicator?
Absolutely. That is quite a loaded question, but I'll keep it in a nutshell. So yeah, my goal is to really help women and men, just individuals in general, step back into their inner power, really to kind of let go of that overwhelm, let go of the burnout, feeling stuck, and really step into loving themselves and actively creating the life that they love. And animal communication may seem very separate in this, but it's not. I'm a strong believer that we have so many different teachers and so many different tools available to us over our lives. And we're not supposed to do this on our own. We're not supposed to go through this human experience just us. So I use animal communication a lot in kind of my work with my clients. And it's not necessarily in the traditional sense of, like what people may think when they think of animal communication, of like, hey, what's my animal thinking, or what's, what do they need for food, or all these different questions. Although I do work in that space and help with that, it goes a lot deeper. Our animals are really great tools that help us, show us what we're not looking at. And they are really, really amazing teachers. So I use them kind of as a tool within our lives to help, guide us on our paths of getting back to, again, loving ourselves and really standing strong in our power and owning that space that you're in. So that's kind of the goal. And I'll share kind of a little bit of how it came about, or at least my journey with it, so it makes a little bit more sense of where I'm coming from. So I started volunteering when I was 13, and kind of just immersed in every different culture I could, working with veterans. I worked in animal shelters. I volunteered in domestic violence shelters, sexual assault, involuntary psych. Domestic violence, you name it. I kind of worked in that space. And truly, I was trying to figure out what was going on with me. It was a space of, I had a lot of trauma, and was just trying to figure out what to do. So I got in a really abusive relationship, and I got to the point of where I was so isolated from everybody else and really, really struggling and didn't like myself. And it got to the point where I attempted to take my own life. And I luckily did not, but I knew something was wrong. So I decided I needed to get help in, kind of the more traditional sense, and took a year off and, did some counseling and different things. I dropped out of school and really just focused on me. During this time, the only place that I let myself feel fully safe or fully supported or really understood was the barn with my horse. So my horse was really the one that was there for me. When you're in that place and mindset of being in an abusive relationship, as some of you may have experienced, is really big for isolation. So I wasn't in a place that I was allowing other people to be there for me, because I had been kind of cut off for many different reasons. And so my horse, even though it doesn't seem like that could be something that would be so impactful, was the reason that I didn't take my life. He was my support. He was there. And so I started spending a ton of my time at the barn with him, and slowly, I was talking to him and just kind of processing out in the way that I knew how to. And he started responding differently to me. And what I mean by that is, like, if I was having a really hard day, our ride was different. I would say something and his body language would change. And so I started talking to him and noticing this and seeing kind of what his reaction would be. And I knew he was understanding me. And so I kind of started playing around with different animals, as far as like my dog and my cat. And the same thing was happening. And I saw how powerful their support can be and how much they can communicate. And so that's kind of where I dove in. And then, on the other side of this, during this time, since I did feel like I had a support, I was allowing myself to get help in different ways. And that's when I got into, more traditional counseling, as well as was introduced to a spiritual teacher. And I always like to tell people that the side of spirituality, I did not believe in. I was completely like, nope, don't believe in that stuff, until I met a spiritual teacher and I experienced it. And so I always tell people, especially with animal communication, because, there is kind of a taboo, energy around it, of give it a shot, because when you experience it, it's very different than you think. And so, anyways, fast forward, I really decided I wanted to keep helping. During this time, I still was kind of volunteering in different places. And I landed my first job in a domestic violence shelter. And I decided I wanted to just go to school for counseling. So that's what I did. I went back to school and got my degree in, the more traditional mental health and addiction counseling. And then kind of started my own business as helping people really live their dreams and show up, and not realize that you have to I'm sorry.
That's okay. Bless you.
Thank you. That you don't have to settle, and you don't have to feel like you're just checking things off, or be unhappy, or be isolated, and really understand how to accept that support and show up for yourself and give yourself that love. So that is not in a nutshell, but that's kind of my journey, and what brought me to kind of my coaching practice, and what I do today.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with us, especially that like called back your power from that
Mm-hmm.
relationship, and to have the animal support is just a beautiful thing, because I mean, I've personally as well have always believed that animals have some form of like love that's hard to explain, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really happy that, however it was, including if it was your horse, well, it was, but you know what I mean? That however that made
Sure.
you stay here and go after your passion and now help others with
Mm-hmm.
hurt and like chaos in their life. I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing about you. And thank you for that, for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah. It's definitely something that I think needs to be talked about. I think a lot of people think of the subject of, mental health, addiction, suicide as being really taboo. And they are in a sense in society, just because it makes people uncomfortable, and people don't like to be uncomfortable. But it happens and it affects so many more people than we think. And so bringing that up and realizing that, hey, you can have trauma. We all have trauma. Absolutely. But it's really what you decide to do with that trauma is what's important. Because, you kind of have two options. And that's where I got to in my life. If I have two options, I can be miserable and not want to be here and not do anything and move forward and feel bad for myself that, I am going through stuff. Or I can decide I'm going to process that, and I'm going to use it to empower myself and move forward, and to show that even though I did have trauma, I'm worthy, and to help other people realize, hey, you get to use that, and move forward. Like, changing that perspective is so important, because if I didn't change my perspective, I wouldn't be here, first of all. And the other piece of it is I wouldn't be, chasing my dreams and moving forward, and learning how to love myself and learning how to do the work, over the years. It's definitely been a journey. But gosh, I look back and it's like, I don't even believe that I was that person, just because of how different it is. But it's really that perspective change of, you never have to take the idea that the trauma is your fault. That's something that I hear come up a lot of, it's really hard to address that it's your fault. That's not what I'm saying at all. But addressing that it did happen and there's nothing that you can do to change it. So it's your job how you process it. Your initial reaction might not be how you would have liked it to be, but your job moving forward is getting to choose how you use that trauma in your life. And people always think it's odd that I say, but I would never, ever, ever change any of the trauma that I've gone through. Not because it's, I've done the process, I've done the work to go through it and process it, but because it did make me who I am today. And it's the reason that I can help people, and understand where some people are coming from when in these really taboo subjects.
I love that a lot, because I definitely agree with that, with with my own trauma as well. Just like,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be here today not like in the physical world, but like in at the pre-pod, for example, and trying
Yeah.
to advocate for mental health and, all those taboo subjects, which I have no idea why they're taboo.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have led me here today, so I appreciate you saying that as well because it's true. And look at what you're doing,
Hmm.
you're helping so many people. You've helped so many people. You helped yourself. And you also found a deeper connection for us to have with our animals. Not just like that they're
Hmm.
cute, little fuzzy, but they have more to offer.
Absolutely. Yeah, they absolutely do. And I like that you said that too. And thank you for, the compliment of helping. I always tell people if you can help one single person, and whether that's yourself or not, it's worth it. So, I mean, moving forward and processing your own trauma, if you can increase your life or even one other individual person's life, you've done it. You've mastered it, right? Because you're moving forward and you're showing up actively in your life, which is kind of what I help people do. I mean, you have the power to manifest. I mean, the power in our minds is just amazing. And then actually, understanding how the subconscious and the conscious mind and energy interact, when you kind of get to that place, you really have a deeper understanding of how to manifest your dreams. I mean, I was talking to my husband the other day, and within 5 years, where we were like broke, still kind of, beaten down, not really showing up, to buying our first house and being married and really manifesting my coaching business. And I'm in my master's degree and kind of in this very different place. It's Nothing has changed except for the fact that I chose to show up. I did the work, and I realized kind of that I need to do the work to release those subconscious patterns that are really moving forward, and also connect that with kind of the energetic piece of it, with working on balancing, the masculine and feminine energy, and working on kind of releasing that stuck tension in your body, because that all contributes to, the overwhelm and the burnout and kind of this grind that we feel like we have to be in to be successful, which is just kind of an outdated sense nowadays. It's not necessarily the way to get all your dreams. And sometimes it's exactly the opposite. If you're working on the grind and not showing up and being creative and in that feminine flow as well, then the two don't balance. And that's kind of our job here as humans, is to figure out how to balance the human experience and our spiritual existence, and figure out how to blend the two together to enjoy our life.
Absolutely. Um, and what I love too is that you actually are coming out with your very own podcast.
Mm-hmm. I am. I'm very excited about it. It's called the Abundance Alchemist podcast. Um, It is launching April 28th of 2021. So it is going to be out there. I'm looking at Spotify and iTunes. Those are the two main I'm focused on right now. But it's going to be a place really to dive deep into kind of science meets soul is kind of the idea that I'm going with. Like I said, I have that traditional background in kind of the mental health and addiction counseling. And then I also immersed under different spiritual teachers and traveled the world and kind of immersed in different cultures to learn more of that spiritual practices. And I'm combining the two because I think that's really where the growth happens. So that's what the podcast is about, is going into, like I said, I keep saying that overwhelm, burnout, and feeling stuck. Those are huge things that people are feeling, that anxiety, that depression, all these things that we're not necessarily addressing the underlying cause, because the traditional counseling, although it can be extremely effective, it works on the conscious mind. It doesn't necessarily go deep enough to break patterns on the subconscious. Every now and then, absolutely. But it takes a longer time. And sometimes people will be like, I don't want to relive my trauma, so I don't want to go to counseling. You don't have to. You don't have to relive that trauma. You do have to process it and release it. But the great thing about our bodies and our souls and our spirit is that you don't have to process your trauma in the same way that it was experienced. And what I mean by that is, you don't necessarily, if you had extreme trauma where froze, like it's kind of, we go to that like fight, flight, or freeze. And if you froze, you're not going to be in that place of where you're feeling like all these emotions come back up. There's a lot of fear around that, right? You're like, that was a really terrifying time for me. I don't want to feel that fear. Your body is so incredibly powerful that it just knows it needs to process out the emotion and process out the energy. And that could come in the form of extreme laughter, of a really big cry, of running, and just like allowing your body to move it out. It doesn't have to be in the way that you processed it. So taking that idea, and then also, we're going to dive into, what does self-love even really mean? What does self-care look like? It's not necessarily the chocolate and bathtub, right? It's more, that might be a little bit more self-indulgence rather than self-care. Self-care is more those things that may not feel great all the time, but really help you in the long run. So it's a place that is going to dive really deep in understanding kind of all the levels that we function on, and how to show up and love your life. That's kind of the honest base of it, I guess, is really, life is too short to not enjoy and love it. And the most amazing piece is that you get to create it.
I'm very excited for your podcast. I think that is going to be very helpful for so many people. I know so many that have told me, they're not about the counseling or therapy life, and I totally get that. But one thing I find interesting that you said that I do see with myself and others sometimes is that we think, oh, we don't want to relive that trauma. But what's interesting is that even though we're not necessarily acknowledging some of the things that have happened, it's still kind of like on our back, you know what I mean? Like that burden or feeling of that trauma. So I do think it's very important for the release in some form. And
absolutely.
I'm excited for your podcast with that.
Thank you. Yeah, you nailed it. If you don't, such a strong believer that if you do not process that emotion or that trauma, it doesn't have anywhere to go. So it will harbor in your body. And we've all heard these kind of like miracle stories about how somebody, had cancer, then they worked in releasing their emotions and processing, and the cancer went away. And it's not necessarily a miracle. It's enacting. It's a beautiful thing, yes, but it's not a miracle. It's enacting and allowing your self-healing mechanisms to come through and allow you to release those energy out of your body. And when you do that, it doesn't have to manifest into something such as a physical illness. But you think about all that pain or different things that you haven't processed and you haven't named those emotions, it can't process. Your brain does not know how to process or release an emotion if you do not give it a name. So like if you are, you just feel like that pit in your stomach about some sort of trauma, or like Bree, you said, kind of it on your back, give that emotion a name and allow it. Give yourself permission to release it. And that permission can be as simple as just saying, I am ready to release this fear. I am ready to release this anger that I'm harboring. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Our minds are super good at complicating stuff, but it is truly, the words don't mean anything to your body. It just means something to your mind. And if you can kind of separate those two, of your body reacts a lot more to energy than it does to your mind, or than your mind does. Your mind obviously is enacting and it has to pay attention and balance with the subconscious and conscious thoughts, but your body is the one harboring the energy. So remembering that, and remembering kind of that your thoughts, once you kind of are releasing some of that energy, your thought pattern is different. Because your thoughts, if you think about this on more of, again, that science level, your thoughts, when you stop for 3 seconds, if we were just to stop for 3 seconds, think about the first thought that comes to your mind. It could be anything. It could be, I'm hungry. I'm listening to this podcast. I think Caitlyn is crazy. Whatever it is, you already told your brain, or your brain already had that thought. So it already told your body how to react. You already changed your entire brain for the rest of your life because you had that thought, which created a chemical reaction within your body. So you think about how powerful these thoughts are, and then you think about when you're carrying the emotion. We all know that emotion doesn't just happen. Emotion is a reaction to your thoughts. Our thoughts tell us how to react to a certain situation, which causes the emotion to happen. So that trauma and that emotion that you're not processing, it has a beautiful ruminating thought pattern that comes along with it. You might notice this in kind of like different self-defeating thoughts. Like if you're struggling with worthiness, like, oh gosh, I can't do anything right. Great, you messed up again, whatever it is, or gosh, I just can't lose this weight. What am I doing? Those really self-defeating thoughts, they are part of that trauma that you're holding on to. So when you give yourself permission to release that trauma, release the emotion, you're also saying, hey, those thought patterns don't serve me anymore. And you get to choose to change those and release those. And I realize that none of this is as easy as it sounds to us, but that's because you're on the conscious level with it. It really is so easy when you can connect to that energy and you allow yourself to be present. Because that's the thing. When we're in the anxiety, we were 100% in the future. When you're upset about your past and you're in that anger, you're in the past. When are you in the present? Right now, right? But then it's what you're feeling. So if you're not in the present, you cannot release that trauma. You can't show up in gratitude to manifest. You really have to kind of pay attention. There's some crazy statistics, and I saw them a while ago, so I might be slightly off in it, but the idea of it was we spend 60% of our time in the future. We spend 30% of our time in the past, or maybe it's 20%. It might be opposite, but regardless, what does that leave you with? 10 to 20%, depending on what the statistic, that you actually can be in the present. That means 10 to 20% of the time, you're actively creating your life. But the other 80 to 90%, you're not. So think about how powerful that is with, releasing and moving forward and actively creating and showing yourself self-love and creating the life that you want. If you're only doing it 10 to 20% of the time, how effective is that? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, if you can get to a place where, like with my clients, I'll work on, hey, okay, watch your thought patterns, right? We'll look at patterns. We'll look at what's going on actively in your mind. We'll look at what's going on in your body. If we can look at all of those things bring you into the present moment. So we're increasing that amount of time you're in the present moment. And that means you have, even if it's 10% more, that gives you, 20 to 30% of actively creating your life rather than that 10 to 20%. It's really powerful.
Yeah. Wow. I never thought of it like that. So just kind of mind blown over here.
Yeah, I know it's crazy. We don't think about, how much we are not really paying attention. I mean, and we're all guilty of it. I am by no means any different, right? We can all get sucked into that never ending to-do list, or, what else you want to do or have to do, or what you feel like you should have done better. And we're really good at allowing our subconscious patterns to dictate where we are in our life currently. And I'll tell you a little secret. Your subconscious mind is only going to get you as far as it's gotten you before. So if you don't like where you're at, nothing is going to change unless you deal with the patterns and the trauma that are dictating what's happening in your life. Your subconscious mind is what, when I see, when I have clients come to me and they'll say, oh, I've been working on manifesting. I've got my vision board. I've got my affirmations. I say two things. Okay, what's the emotion behind those? Because the big house and the car and the fit body or whatever you're looking at, they don't matter. What's the emotion behind it? That's what you're craving. So look at the emotion. And then the next piece is really going into that space of, what are you doing to do this? Are you even present? Are you, what are the patterns that are running? Because your subconscious mind is the one that has to match up with your energetic frequency. That's what the block is for a lot of people with manifesting. You can consciously think, I am doing it. I'm working towards getting this house. But if there's a subconscious pattern that's not allowing you to do it, your subconscious mind is what reacts to your energetic frequencies. If those two are in imbalance, you're not going to manifest it, because you have to be giving, because in that way you're giving mixed messages to the universe. You're saying, I'm going to continue doing this pattern and I'm not really willing to change that. But hey, I want this big house and I want to feel worthy and I want all these things, but the two don't match. So just pay attention to those two. And I know I can kind of just go off on tangents here, but those two are super important. You know, that emotion piece and knowing what you're actually feeling, they bring you into the present, gives your brain the ability to process it out and release it. And it also shows you what's going on in your subconscious mind.
Well, I appreciate your tangents because they're not really tangents, but I appreciate that you did go off because um it's good to get that perspective. I don't think that we think a lot about that perspective. And what's funny about the subconscious mind is that because the term itself is subconscious, you think that it's smaller than your conscious.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see how actually bigger it is than, if that makes sense,
100%. Yeah.
the conscious
Oh,
mind.
it does. Absolutely. Yeah. I tell people a lot of the, like we were just talking about, the traditional mental health counseling, it works on the conscious mind. It's not super helpful in the sense that, I mean, and same thing with affirmations, they work a lot more on the conscious mind. Affirmations can get to the subconscious because, repetition, we know can work on the subconscious, but that's why affirmations alone don't help with manifesting. People can do affirmations for years and they might feel a little bit better, but it's because the affirmations really depend again on what the emotion is behind it. And that's what the craving is. But yeah, I mean, you have to go so much deeper than really the conscious mind. I mean, so many of the meditations and things that I work on with my clients are really just occupying the conscious mind so that we can dive down into what the subconscious pattern going on is, so that we can deal with that. Because you can tell the conscious mind a million things, but your conscious mind is not the one that matters when you are going through different behaviors and patterns, or you're like, hey, why do I keep self-sabotaging? Nothing to do with the conscious mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Now I'm questioning my affirmations.
Oh, no. They're good. Affirmations are a great way to, to even get started. Like, it's a great way to just be thinking about something. But that's why I say affirmations alone, and, vision boards alone, they're tough because the other piece of this is mindset, right? So if we're looking at your vision board, your affirmations, and you've been doing it for a long time, one of the biggest things with them is it keeps you in a lack mindset. And so again, going back to that piece where I said, if you're looking at the subconscious and energetic frequency matching, if you're in a lack mindset, are you actually in the energy that you're trying to create? Because like, if you're looking at the big house and it's like, yeah, I really want that, but you're retelling yourself or kind of reintegrating, I don't have that yet, so I'm not where I want to be. So the manifesting piece is difficult because then people get fear about like, oh my gosh, I don't want to manifest the wrong thing, which can also be a block. So I always tell people the biggest thing with manifesting is trust, divine timing. I know it's extremely hard because we don't like to be in the unknown. It's uncomfortable, but divine timing. And then the next piece is going to be the emotion behind it. You can have every single thing that you want when you focus on the emotion. I wanted a house for years. And I was just like, why is this not happening? Why don't I have a house? Why am I still in an apartment? And just because I really struggle with apartments, just because other people are in my energetic space. And so I was like, why can't I just manifest this house already? And when I shifted it and I worked on it with my clients, and I was getting kind of these channeling of, hey, you have to focus on the emotion, it happened so quick. Like, we were not really in the market for a house. And we were not in a place that we were thinking we were going to be like breaking our lease at our apartment. We were thinking we'd extend for another year because we had just gotten married. And the month after we got married, we found a house. And of course, everybody knows how crazy the housing market is. Right now, I'm in Colorado. Right now, houses are selling in 2 days. They go on the market on Thursday. Most of the time, they're done and sold by Sunday. People are waiving inspections and going way over asking price. I was a first-time home buyer, and so was my husband. And we found a house that was older, was in our budget, had been completely redone and renovated. And we saw it on Thursday, put it in an offer on Friday, and we got picked. First-time home buyers, didn't put in for over asking price. Just manifested like crazy, right? But the only difference was that I let go for divine timing. And I focused on the emotion that I felt like the house was going to give me. And that was that I felt like I was going to be in a peaceful place and I was going to be able to create more. And so I focused on those two, and that's when it happened. So we don't create abundance. This is a really good thing to remember. You do not create abundance. We create blocks. And it's not something to beat yourself up about. It's just human nature. And it's a beautiful part of our journey because it's learning. But noticing what blocks you're creating is what allows the abundance to flow.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to write that
Of
down.
course.
Well, I have it here too,
Yeah.
but wow, yeah. And congratulations to you both with your house. Um,
Thank you. Yeah.
Divine timing, it can be so bittersweet, but I
Oh,
guess it's like
yes.
just focusing that the sweetness can happen and believing that the sweetness is coming. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I do want to say something on that too, because I mentioned a little bit earlier about how your when you have a thought, it creates the reaction within your body. And thinking about how powerful that is, that if you're focusing on the emotion of what you truly want or what's behind what you're trying to manifest, you have the power to create it within your body, which means you're not putting yourself in that lack mindset. So there's kind of the difference between if you're just looking at your vision board and you're saying, yeah, I really want that house, or those affirmations of, yeah, I really want, to be skinny, or I want to lose 10 pounds. What's behind it? Go deeper. And then you actually create that in your body. Because when you are in a space of gratitude and you are in a space of actually embodying that emotion, my friend, you are going to manifest so quickly. It's going to be beautiful how that happens and plays out. And then divine timing. I mean, sometimes we get this negative connotation with divine timing because it's like, hey, it's not happening on my clock. But divine timing is such a beautiful gift because it only gives you what you're ready for. So just remember that too. If it's a beautiful time when it happens, because it means you're ready and it means you're growing and you're moving forward. So celebrate that. Celebrate those too. We, can sit here and beat ourselves up about, oh gosh, I'm creating the blocks, or oh gosh, what patterns am I running on my subconscious? And those are all really important to think about and to dive into and do the work, because we have to do the work to show up how we want to. But the beautiful piece of it too is you get to look at, oh my gosh, look at what I'm creating. Look at how much better I feel about myself. I mentioned earlier, like I looked back at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, who was that person? But isn't that such a beautiful thing to look at? Not in a beat up sense of, the self-deprecating sense of, oh gosh, that person was awful, but wow, look at how beautiful the growth process is. And look at how amazing that is, because your brain gets stimulated by growth. That's what, so looking at when you pay attention and you pay attention to focus on how you function in all different levels and pay attention to the emotions and the thoughts, we get in this place of where sometimes we think those are the enemy, but those are the gift. Those are the gifts that we get to experience and we get to feel and we get to think and we get to grow and change and process all this stuff as a human to create the life that we want. And it's just, I am so thankful for every single emotion and thought that I have, even the ones that are not fun, because if it was always fun, you truly wouldn't be having a great life, right? The great life is about growth. The great life is about, engaging and being present and going through things and seeing the growth that happens. It's not about it always being the best. It's like that cliche saying, but gosh, it has so much power. It's not about the destination. It's all about the journey, right? But truly, what is the destination of a life? When you think about it, it's death, and that doesn't seem like it's very happy, but life is the journey, right? So even getting to these things, when you get to the goal, think about it in terms of goals. When you hit a goal, what's the next thing you do? Your conscious mind gets you to that point. All right, what's my next goal? You don't sit there and celebrate, oh my gosh, how freaking cool, I have a house, or oh my gosh, how amazing, I don't feel anxious today. Or, gosh, that was so awesome. I didn't think about not liking myself for 2 minutes today. Whatever it is, that moment, sit there and celebrate it, because then you are creating gratitude inside your body. And gratitude is your secret power. Gratitude is what skyrockets manifesting, skyrockets self-love, skyrockets every single thing that you want. When you're in that space, it is the highest frequency energy that you can be in. So just focus on what you're doing well, even if you're not focusing. Shift that perspective. We focus on what we don't do well. So today, when you're listening to this, I invite you to really dive into, what am I doing well today? What does it feel like to do well today? If you are crossing things off your to-do list, okay, great. What does it feel like to have that all crossed off your to-do list? Don't go into that place of, oh my gosh, I still have so much more to do on my to-do list. I'm so overwhelmed. Shift and allow yourself to be in that space, right? It's all about shifting the perspective. It's all about, when we do that simple perspective shift, we change the chemistry within our body. We change the thought pattern within our mind, and we're in a space of gratitude, which changes the energetic frequency. And what did I say earlier? When those match up, you are capable of having every single thing that you want. I don't like when people say you can't have it all. Oh, yes, you can. You can absolutely have everything that you want. It just takes work. And it's not the traditional grind of work that people think. It is the work that people do on their inner self. Your internal reality is what creates your external reality. So if you are working your butt off on loving yourself and figuring out how to process that trauma and releasing it, and this is where coaches are super awesome. I always tell people, coaches have coaches have coaches, because when somebody else can give you an outside perspective and you have a safe place to talk about things, you are able to actually bring up what's going on. I tell people too, I don't do anything in my coaching sessions besides be a mirror and a reflection of you. It is a place where you get to process, and you're processing what's going on within you. I can show you what I see and what I feel, but what you do is actually you're coming in. Your guidance is channeling through me. It's all about you in those sessions. It's just great to have someone that can give you that space, because sometimes we don't have that space. And like I said, my space is my horse for a long time, until I did find a spiritual coach. If people are into traditional mental health counseling, if that's your therapist, awesome. Just see where you have that space to have a safe place that you can just let go. Because when you let go, your subconscious patterns can come through, your energy can come through. You're not actively blocking what you need to with your conscious mind.
Wow. I'm just like, I think that's so awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And I just can't wait for your podcast. I feel like there's gonna be so much that you have to share. And just in this little time, that we have right now, you've shared so much. So I can only imagine what you have prepared for everyone. And I can't wait. I will be one of your followers.
Awesome. Thank you, Bree. I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm so happy that I was able to kind of come on and share and be on your platform today. It's a huge honor to get to talk to people. And I always tell people too, it's not, for me, it's really not about like selling coaching sessions. It's about the fact that, like I said earlier, we are all supposed to have so many different teachers, and we have so many amazing tools. So engage with those. It's again, I'm really good at cliches. So the world is your oyster, right? But in all reality, it's all about, figuring out you and figuring out how to enjoy your life and love yourself. So it's been such a huge honor to even come on here and be able to just talk to people that I may have not got to, meet and connect with in a different space.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm absolutely honored to have you come on here and share all of the insight. And before we go, though, I'd love for you to share your platforms so that they're able to follow you and see where you're at, what's up, the podcast.
Of course, yeah. So like I said, my podcast will be launching April 28th. It's called the Abundance Alchemist podcast. It'll be right now, like I said, on iTunes and Spotify. And I am on Facebook at the Abundance Alchemist. And I also am on Instagram at Caitlyn, which is Caitlyn, dot the Abundance Alchemist. So those are kind of the places I hang out the most. You can also find me on my website. I have a blog on my website as well, that I love to kind of share some juicy details on, and insight. And my website is theabundancealchemist.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And for many of you that tune in with us, I just wanted to do our 3 affirmations. So if you resonate with the following numbers of 1, 2, 3, you choose a number, and then that is your affirmation of the day. So for group number 1, I am in the process of positive change. For those of you that aligned with number 2, I forgive myself and set myself free. And for those of you that chose number 3, I am loved. And with that, you are loved, you are worthy, you are cherished, and I am proud of you. Until next time on the Brie Pod. Bye.
Bye.